Some say Chinese is one of the most difficult languages in the world, and learning it is almost impossible.
So learning Chinese, the most difficult thing.
非常非常非常非常非常难
So I'm sort of tone deaf. I can't really hear them.
I think the cultural mindset is the biggest complication for
The
us.
grammar.
知吃思诗都很难
It's just complicated so much.
Only because you're not learning it in the right way. Why not try Takeaway Chinese, where you can take some Chinese away and experience progress day by day. Takeaway Chinese, we will promise you a difference.
你好，欢迎收听随行汉语 Welcome to Takeaway Chinese. I'm Fei Fei, and today joining me in the studio is our Tony Reed. Hello, Tony. I do have the first question for you in this episode.
The first question, okay.
I'm gonna have a lot of questions later.
Okay.
But the first one would be, you've studied and learned Chinese for quite a few years now. And what do you think is like the most difficult part for you still?
Well, in addition to the listening, because sometimes when people are speaking, they speak it very fast. I don't hear any tones at all when people are speaking quickly. But the tones for me, when I'm trying to speak it, I'm awful at it. So yeah, I'm tone deaf when it comes to Chinese, and then also the pronunciation sometimes.
Oh, so of course, you know, it's sort of intertwined
Yeah.
with the tones as well, and you can't avoid it in
Right.
Chinese.
So yeah, those are probably the hardest, the listening, the pronunciation, and the tones.
And that's really our topic for this episode of
geez.
Takeaway Chinese, and to know about your biggest struggle in learning Chinese.
All right.
And even for, you know, someone of a native speaker like me, I would say I still have struggles with the Chinese language as well.
Really?
It's really about the characters, like how to read the characters. You know, sometimes they look really alike and their pronunciations are also very similar.
Right.
But it also happens that the characters look alike with each other, but their pronunciations are very different. There will be never a rule for me to understand or master about the pronunciation and the characters of the Chinese language. And I have to look up the dictionary every time I run into a new character.
And that's kind of funny too.
Yeah.
When you see a native speaker having to look up in a dictionary.
Still, you know, after speaking Chinese for more than 30 years now, I still check the dictionaries once in a while for new characters, and we have, I think, tens of thousands of characters in the Chinese language.
Jeez. For me, it's the other way, where there's a word that sounds exactly the same, but the characters are different. Since I don't read the characters yet, I'll just hear a word and I'm like, wait a minute, doesn't that mean this? And I think I do that a lot on the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the topic for this episode. And first of all, as usual, we have a dialogue talking about the difficulties in learning Chinese.
你的中文说得真不错，学多长时间了？
谢谢夸奖，我学了2年了。
你觉得学中文难吗？什么最难学？
刚开始觉得很难，尤其是写字很难。慢慢的学会了笔画，掌握了规律，就不难了。
Okay, that's the whole dialogue, and we'll break it down sentence by sentence.
Cool.
The
And I
first,
think this conversation is very basic, and it's questions that I think most people would ask in this context.
and the first one is 你的中文说得真不错，学多长时间了？
So this is, your Chinese is really good. How long have you been studying? So 你的, ni is you, de is possession, so this is your. And then 中文 is the Chinese language.
Yep.
And then 说的, so 说 means to say or speak. And then de is like what you said. So this de again is possession. And then 真 is very, and then 不错 is like not bad. So
Yeah.
very not bad is another way of saying it's actually quite good.
Yes, but actually the de here means is more have a grammatical function in this sentence.
Okay.
It's sort of commenting on the verb before it, on the action. So 说得不错 is actually saying that the speaking of your Chinese is very good. But in the Chinese language, you can't just say 说不错. That doesn't make sense. You have to have the de in between the 说 and the 不错 to make the sentence sounds more natural.
It almost, I mean, in this context, the 说 here doesn't seem like a verb anymore. It seems kind of like a noun because it's like you're speaking, your Chinese, your vocabulary or something like that. It almost seems like this is a noun, so the de here would work for that too, right?
Well, but you know, in Chinese, sometimes for a lot of words, you can't really, they can be very misleading when it comes to whether it's a verb or a noun or adjective. You know, their functions keep changing when they are placed in different places of a sentence. But here with the writing of the de, it actually indicates not really in the meaning of a possession, but, you know, sort of indicating I have a grammatical function here that I want to comment on the verb, on the action before me. So the writing would be different. You can see the 你的中文的 de with this one. The characters are very different, even though they sound exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm looking at the writing, and I only see one de that I recognize. The other one's missing.
Yeah, it's more complicated. The writing is more complicated.
Okay. And then we have 学多. So 学 is study. And then 多长, I think this is how long. And then 时间 is time. And then 了, I think this is like to denote that it's continuous, right?
Sort of, yeah, in the end of the sentence.
Okay, so this is like, how much time have you studied it?
Yeah, exactly. And the answer is 谢谢夸奖，我学了2年了。
Okay, so this is thank you for your compliment. I have been studying Chinese for 2 years. Before I translate this, I'm having trouble with another word. The compliment is 夸奖.
夸奖
And this is compliment, right?
Yes.
What's exaggeration?
夸张
Sounds very similar, right?
Yeah.
Compliment and exaggeration, and they're almost kind of related, right?
Sort of, especially the first character is exactly the same. So 夸奖, the 奖 actually meaning award. And the 夸张, the 张 is sort of expand. So by both of the characters, you can tell that 夸奖 meaning it's a compliment. 夸张 is like the exaggeration. But yeah, sometimes you will sort of mix them together and start wondering, you know, which one is which.
Right. So 谢谢夸奖. So 谢谢 is obviously thank you, and as you just explained, 夸奖 is compliment. And then 我 is I, 学了 looks like I studied. And then 2年 is 2 years. And then 了 again, and that's the part that I'm a little confused on, because it's like 了, I've always took it as it's something that you say when an action is completed.
Yeah.
But now we've got 2 here, and it's like, wait a minute.
That's confusing.
Right.
What happens with the 2 la's? That never happens in other languages. But here, actually, both of the la's carries some sort of a tense function in here. For example, the 学了 meaning, of course, I studied the Chinese from the past. It's not like I study now. And then the second la in the end of the sentence are indicating that I'm still gonna keep learning the Chinese language.
Okay.
So you can see that for 我学了2年了, if we are going to translate it into English, I think it will be I've been studying Chinese for 2 years.
So present perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
So we need 2 less in Chinese to do that. It may be confusing because you can also say 我学了2年. That means I studied or I learned for 2 years.
That's finished time though,
The
right?
finished time. It's not sure if I'm still studying it
Right.
or I'm gonna still keep studying it. It just means I've spent 2 years on it. But with the second la in the end of the sentence, that means I'm still gonna keep learning that, still going to carry on with this action.
Okay.
And then we have the third sentence. 你觉得学中文难吗？什么最难学？
So this is, do you think it's difficult to learn Chinese? And what is the toughest part or the most difficult part? And so 你觉得, this is you think, right?
Yeah.
And then 学中文, study Chinese. 难吗? Nan is difficult. And then ma, of course, is the question. And that's pretty straightforward. 什么 is what? And then 最, I think this is like most.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then 难, of course, is difficult. And then 学 is study. So what is the most difficult about the study?
Yes, exactly. And then the last one is 刚开始觉得很难，尤其是写字很难。慢慢的学会了笔画，掌握了规律，就不难了。
So this is, it was difficult at first, especially with writing Chinese characters. But gradually I learned the strokes and mastered the rules of Chinese characters, and then it wasn't so difficult. Yeah? Quite a long sentence, but 刚开始, I think 刚 means like suddenly or
It's like just.
And then 开始, this is the start, right? And then 觉得 is, I think, right?
I think or I feel.
Feel. And then 很难, so at first I feel it's very hard.
Yes.
And then 尤其, this 尤其 means particularly. 是, this is, yeah? And then 写字, I think this is the writing the characters.
Yeah, 写字 is
Okay.
the writing characters.
Okay. 很难 is very difficult. And then 慢慢, is this like slowly?
Yeah, 慢慢的 is slowly.
Okay.
But if you translate it literally, it's like too slowly.
Okay. So 慢慢的学会了
学 is, of course, learn or study.
Okay.
And 会了 here actually means I'm not only studied and learned it, I also know how to do it and I sort of master it.
Okay. So mastered it. 笔画, I think this is the actual writing or the strokes, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's really a very big part of learning Chinese, especially in writing.
Okay.
笔画.
So then we have 掌握了规律. So 掌握了, what exactly is this?
掌握了 is also master.
Okay. So then 学会了, is this learning or mastering?
It's like I learned
Okay.
and I know about it, but it's not as the high level of mastering it.
Okay, so 掌握了 is to master it.
Yes.
And then 学会了 is to learn it.
Yeah, you can say, I know Chinese because I learned it for a long time. 我学会了说中文. I learned and know how to speak Chinese. I don't think you can say, I master the Chinese language.
Right. That's a little bit different. All right, 掌握了, mastered. 规律, like patterns or
Yeah.
the rules.
Yeah, the patterns. 规律.
And then 就不难了. So 就 is normally then. 不难 means not difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Can you sort of resonate with the second speaker here, like with the writing and how it struggled that you have to go through to learn about the strokes, the 笔画, and tell the differences between characters?
Well, I think that this person in the dialogue has exceeded my studying in terms of because I haven't done too much of the strokes in the writing. For me, I've been trying to grapple with the pronunciation and speaking the language.
Yeah, exactly.
and being able to listen. So, but yes, I think with anything, as long as you stick with it and keep practicing, then it gets easier.
And do you feel more confident about the whole dialogue?
Well, I have a script in front of me, so I think it will be really easier. So let me go ahead and start the dialogue. 你的中文说得真不错，学多长时间了？
谢谢夸奖，我学了2年了。
你觉得学中文难吗？什么最难学？
刚开始觉得很难，尤其是写字很难。慢慢的学会了笔画，掌握了规律，就不难了。You're listening to Takeaway Chinese with myself, Fei Fei, and Tony Reed. We'd love to hear from you. You can send us your thoughts via email to learnchinese@cri.com.cn. And for more fun Chinese learning, you can also follow us on Facebook by searching Learn Chinese to watch many fun videos and live streams. And coming up next, let's talk more about the challenges and difficulties you encountered when learning Chinese. 学中文什么最难? Don't go away, so you will take some Chinese away. Welcome back to Takeaway Chinese. I'm Fei Fei, joined by Tony Reed in the studio. And Tony, we're talking about the struggles, the most difficult, the most challenging part in learning Chinese. And we actually did a little survey on Facebook before the show.
You did?
Yes. I asked, what was the hardest part of learning Chinese for you? 你觉得学中文最难的是什么? And we have like several options there. And the top one struggle for most of our followers is the pronunciation and the tones.
Of course. I'm telling you, it is really, really tough to pronounce things the proper way, and I think that's just really telling for anyone who's learning a language. You can listen to someone's recording and tell that, okay, that's a foreigner, or that's someone that's learning the language. And just like in English, I could listen to someone speaking English and be like, okay, English is not their first language. Because of pronunciation. So I think that's something that all people who are learning a new language is going to struggle with.
I remember when I first get into teaching Chinese language to a non-Chinese speaker. And there was a very famous sentence. And I was like, what's difficult with that? I can't see why people are saying it's like the most difficult sentence in the Chinese language. It is actually ma, 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 ma. I was like, that's pretty straightforward. What's the problem here? And then I realized, for a lot of non-Chinese speakers out there, this sentence just sounds like a lot of mas.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it doing? Like ma, 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 ma. What does it mean? It doesn't make sense.
I have no idea. And it does sound like you're saying just ma, 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 ma.
Yeah, but it's a very famous sentence for a lot of non-Chinese speakers to grasp the difference of the 4 tones in the Chinese language. Is ma, the 3rd tone, the horse. Ma is like the scold, to scold. Mama is mother, mom. Ma is also to scold. Ma is also the horse. And so in Chinese, it sort of makes sense. But apparently, with the tones, very difficult for people to
It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
And see, now when you slow it down, and this has been my biggest hurdle in learning Chinese, is when someone is speaking naturally, they speak very fast, and you don't hear any of those tones. None of them. I'm convinced that they don't use them. But in the context of whatever they're talking about, I think that obviously native speakers can understand each other. But for us as learners, we have to get the tones right. Otherwise, people just won't understand what we're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you can be saying one thing, but because the tone is wrong, you are meaning absolutely something else.
But also, we also say on the show that Chinese is a very high context language. So if you are in, say, a restaurant and you're speaking in the context of a restaurant, maybe your pronunciation isn't that good, but they know that this is probably what you want in that particular context. So it's hit or miss. It just depends on again, where you are and how much you know. You don't have to get the tones 100% right, which is kind of hope for you learners out there, that you don't have to be perfect, but as long as you're in the right context, you should be okay.
And also, according to the survey we did on Facebook, the second biggest struggle for the followers is actually reading the characters, which I don't think we talked a lot on the show because apparently we don't have the media to show the characters.
Right.
But I think even for me, I think I mentioned also in the beginning of the show, is that reading characters and learning to read and write different characters. I mean, we have at least 3,000 frequently used.
3,000, huh?
Yeah, Chinese characters. And is still, I think, a struggle even for the native speakers. Because for my daughter, who is in her second year in her primary school, she spent a lot of time in her Chinese class learning, writing, repeating different characters they learned in that class. And that takes them a long time to sort of train them to get to know these characters.
Sure.
And to know the differences, especially when some characters really look alike.
Yeah.
And she also made mistakes from time to time because, some things, they look very similar, but it means different things. And I think for a lot of Chinese, we spend pretty much our whole primary school time on writing, learning these characters.
Jeez, that's a long time.
Yeah, and I don't think that happens for example, in American schools, that you don't spend 4 years learning to write the 26 letters in the English language.
Well, I think that they exercise that writing skill other ways. They have you write essays, right? They have you do different things that show your writing ability. And if your writing is awful, then they'll leave you a lower mark and say handwriting is bad.
Yeah.
You missed the mark here, this and that. And so I suppose that writing is still fundamental, but it's just not, it's not done the way that it's done in China with the characters. So, but it's important. So whether it's here or abroad, writing is important.
It is.
So it makes sense. But yeah, 非常困难.
困难, yes, 非常困难.
Okay.
写字.
写字.
And also, I think for a lot of primary school students in China, they also spend some time on the calligraphy.
How do we say calligraphy?
书法.
书法. So
it's like to learn to write the characters more aesthetically.
How do you ask someone, do they know how to do calligraphy? Do you say 你可以做?
写.
写?
Well, it depends. For example, you can ask, 你会书法吗? Do you know calligraphy?
Okay.
And that's a simpler way, but in a more natural way would be 你会写毛笔字吗?
毛笔 what?
毛笔字. 毛笔 is the brushes we use in calligraphy.
Horse?
And 字 is the characters.
Is it from a horse?
Not really.
Mao sounds like horse.
No, it's like the hair. Mao is the hair of a horse or some other animals. It depends on the brushes you choose.
Okay.
But you can ask, do you know how to write 毛笔字, like writing in brushes?
Okay.
你会写毛笔字吗?
Ma is horse, right? Ma
is the question.
Oh, and ma
is horse.
Is horse, right?
Yeah.
And then Mao is cat.
Mao. The first tone is cat. Mao, the second tone is hair.
Okay. 头发, what is this?
头发 is also hair.
Okay. So it's
but we just don't call human hair Mao. Mao is specifically for animals.
Okay.
We call human hair, its proper name like 头发 or something else.
Okay, got it. See, I'm glad we discussed that because, as we just talked about, at the introduction of this show, certain words have similar meanings and different sounds and similar sounds. And
it was very confusing. And the third top struggles in learning Chinese is listening and speaking for our Facebook followers, which I think is pretty much the common struggle for most language learners, regardless being Chinese or not.
Right. When someone is really going on in Chinese and they're going really fast and they're so passionate about what they're talking about, and you're just like, can you slow down? I think I heard one word there that I understood. Everything else, I have no idea.
Also for me, when I was learning English, which I'm still learning right now, is that for when people are talking, especially in accents, I was like, what, you need to slow down for me to keep it up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's one thing when you are learning it on a textbook with a professional teacher, slow it down and speaking explicitly for you to understand. It's another thing when you're running into them in your daily life.
Right. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are not going to slow down for you in everyday life. And also people like watching movies with subtitles and they get used to that. But in life, there's no subtitles.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I've noticed that a lot of the Chinese teaching materials online, they're saying that, you know, in China, when people run into each other, they like to ask, have you eaten? As a way of greeting.
你吃了吗?
你吃了吗? But actually, in modern days, right now, among young Chinese people, we don't ask that question as often as before. Like, for example, if I run into one of our co-workers in the hallway, I'm not gonna ask him or her, 你吃了吗? I'm probably just say hi.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, I take that differently. It makes it sound like you wanna eat with me or something.
It's like I'm asking you out for lunch or something.
Yeah. And that was my first thought. Like the first 20 times it happened to me, I was like, why is everybody asking me if I eat? That sounds so sweet. Like they're so concerned about my stomach, but in reality, it's just
it's just one of the many options we have.
Yeah,
it's
something to say in that gap where there's nothing to say. Right?
It also happens when, you know, if you bump into someone who is just walking outside of the office.
Yeah.
And I sometimes ask, 出去啊? You're going outside? I'm not saying, you know, I'm checking if you're leaving the office or where are you going. I'm just, you know, as a way to fill in the blanks because apparently we're not going to have time for a little chat or we're not that close to have that chat.
Wow.
So I'm just saying, you know, 出去啊 as a way of greeting, and she or he would be responding with yeah.
It's kind of, it's a little strange, but it's good to know. That way when people do ask you that, you can understand what it is.
Yeah, so for a lot of listeners, probably when people are not asking, have you eaten? 你吃了吗? It's not happening all the time in China.
They don't care about, they don't care if you're hungry or not, guys.
And yeah, that's the top 3 struggles. 最难的3个点 in learning Chinese.
What are some of the other ones, just to read them off?
Something else like grammars and sentence structures.
Sentence structure is so hard for me too.
And also cultural understanding and lack
just like what we talked
immersion.
about now, going outside, right? And like, have you eaten? You know, this is culture, but understanding it.
And also the last one is lack of immersion, but I think that only can be solved with you going to a Chinese-speaking environment.
Yep.
Which can be a struggle for those who are not living in China at the moment.
That's
right. So yeah, these are the struggles, most common struggles that we have. Not we have, but the Facebook followers we have. And that brings us to the end of today's Takeaway Chinese. I'm Fei Fei with Tony Reid here in the studio. For more episodes of the show, you can visit our website at radio.cgtn.com and go to the column podcast. You can listen to the show and read the script there.
Find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and much more. Just search for Takeaway Chinese, and don't forget to leave your comments, questions, and ratings.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
再见.